He was boarding his private jet when he froze. His ex-wife stood across the terminal, holding hands with twins who had his eyes. 7 years of silence shattered in an instant, but as she turned away without a word, one question echoed in his soul. Had he abandoned more than just their love? Before we dive into this unforgettable journey, tell us in the comments, where are you watching from? If stories about love, sacrifice, and second chances speak to your heart, hit that subscribe button, because tomorrow we're bringing you another powerful story you won't want to miss. The airport pulsed with noise and movement, a constant hum of rolling suitcases, boarding calls, and hurried footsteps. For most people, it was chaos. For Lucas Vance, it was just another checkpoint in a carefully timed life. He stood at the gate of his private terminal, tall and composed, his tailored suit crisp despite the long day. His assistant rattled off last-minute updates about the merger he was flying out to finalize, but Lucas's mind was already calculating numbers and weighing risks. That was what he did best, solved problems with logic, never emotion. And then it happened. He turned casually at the sound of laughter, light and melodic, cutting through the drone of voices. His eyes caught on a figure across the crowded terminal, and his world stopped. Zara Monroe, his ex-wife. 7 years had passed, but Lucas would have known her anywhere. Her skin glowed under the fluorescent lights, her natural curls framed her face just as they had the last time he saw her, and her posture carried that same quiet defiance. She hadn't changed, and yet she had, and maturity wrapped her in a deeper grace, and something unspoken in her eyes made his chest ache. But it wasn't just her. 2 children stood at her side, a boy and a girl about 6 years old clutching her hands tightly. Twins. Their clothes were simple, their backpacks nearly bigger than their bodies, but none of that mattered. What mattered, what hit Lucas like a blow, were their faces. The boy had his curls, the girl had his dimple. Both had his pale blue eyes, the unmistakable mark of his family's line. Lucas froze, his breath catching painfully. His assistant continued speaking, but the words were muffled, distant, meaningless. The only sound he heard was the pounding of his own heart. It couldn't be. It shouldn't be. But it was. He was staring at his children. Children he had never met. Children Zara had never told him about. Zara's eyes lifted then, as though pulled by an invisible thread. They locked onto his. For a split second, something flickered. Surprise, maybe, or something buried, but it was gone as quickly as it appeared. Her face hardened, her jaw set, and with a practiced calm, she turned away. She didn't run, she didn't stumble, she simply walked, her steps measured, her grip on the children's hands tightening as if to anchor them. Lucas's chest constricted. The air felt thin, suffocating. "Mr. Vance?" his assistant asked, frowning. "Boarding has started. We should—" "Cancel it," Lucas interrupted, his voice hoarse. "Cancel the flight. Now." Before his assistant could respond, Lucas was already moving, weaving through the crowd with an urgency he hadn't felt in years. Business deals, stock values, boardroom rivalries, all of it faded into nothing. The only thing that mattered was Zara. Zara and the 2 children who carried pieces of his. He caught glimpses of them through the sea of travelers. Her head tilted protectively toward the children, her shoulders squared, her pace steady. Every step she took away from him burned in his chest. Memories surged without permission. Their first meeting at a charity gala, when her laugh had been louder than the music. Their wedding day, her hand trembling in his as she whispered vows. The nights of fighting, his cold words slicing against her desperate ones. The morning she left, her suitcase clutched in her hand, her eyes brimming with tears that he had refused to chase. And now, this. He had let her walk away. He had convinced himself it was final, and yet, all this time, had she been carrying not just her own heart, but his bloodline? He reached the escalator just as they stepped onto it. The children chattered innocently, unaware of the storm unraveling behind them. Zara's face remained forward, determined not to acknowledge him again. But Lucas couldn't look away. His entire empire, his entire life of logic and control crumbled in that moment. All he could think, all he could feel, was a question that cut deeper than any he had ever faced. Why hadn't she told him? And, more terrifying still, what if he had abandoned not just Zara, but them? The escalator carried them down, the crowd swallowing them up. Lucas clenched the rail, his knuckles white, his heart racing. His assistant called out again, confused, but he ignored him. He knew only one thing with certainty. He wasn't letting Zara walk away this time. Not without answers. Not without the truth. Without facing the children who looked just like him. He reached the concourse as Zara stepped off the escalator and angled toward the arrivals hall. The twins tugged at her hands, curious and unhurried in a way only children can be, pausing to look at a wall of postcards, pointing at a neon donut sign, asking silent questions with their eyes. Lucas followed at a distance, close enough to see the cowlick at the boy's crown and the way the girl's curls bounced like springs when she walked. A gate agent murmured, "Mr. Vance?" as he passed. He kept moving. A security officer nodded. He didn't see him. The airport smelled of coffee and rain-soaked coats, the sound system announcing delays, lives rerouted by weather and fate. He had never believed in fate, but here it was, walking ahead of him. His phone vibrated relentlessly. He ignored it until the fourth vibration, and then lifted it to his ear without slowing. His assistant's voice flooded in, brisk and alarmed. "They've boarded. The Zurich team is waiting. What should I tell them?" Lucas watched the girl press both hands to the glass of a viewing window. "Tell them the meeting is postponed," he said. "Indefinitely." A beat of silence. "Sir, we can't indefinitely," he repeated, softer but immovable. "Reschedule, rebook, reframe, whatever you need to do. I'll handle the fallout." He ended the call, the finality of it vibrating down into his bones. For once, an empire could wait. Zara slowed near a cluster of seating where a crowded cafe spilled warmth and the scent of cinnamon. She knelt to adjust the boy's backpack strap, then the girl's shoelaces, nimble fingers tying neat bows. Lucas stopped behind a pillar and let the moment wash over him. Her tenderness, the children's absolute trust, the normalcy of a ritual that had never included him. The boy said something too soft to hear. Zara smiled, and for a second, it was the smile that had once undone him. A quick flare of light that made everything else feel dim. The smile faded when she stood and turned. Her gaze skimmed the crowd and caught him again. No surprise this time, no softness, only a warning in her eyes. He stepped out from the pillar, palms open, not closer than would startle the twins. Words failed him. The last time they spoke had been sharp, words flung like stones across a widening river. Now the river felt like an ocean. He tried anyway. Zara, her name felt different now. No title, no claim, just a prayer that might be refused. She shifted slightly to put herself between him and the children, the move so natural and fierce it pierced him. "We're leaving," she said, voice even, low. "There's nothing to discuss here." The girl peered around Zara's leg, curious, unafraid. Lucas forced his own voice steady. "I don't want to make a scene. I need to understand." The boy's hand tightened on Zara's fingers. "We're fine," she replied, eyes flint. "We've been fine." A boarding call rolled overhead. Somewhere a suitcase toppled, someone laughed, a baby cried, the great indifferent chorus of travel. Within it, Lucas found only one thread and held to it. "If you ask me to walk away right now, I will," he said, the truth scraping his throat. "But please don't do that, without letting me say this. Whatever happened between us, I didn't know." He searched her face for a crack in the stone. "I didn't know." Her jaw worked once, a tide she swallowed back. "Not here," she said finally. "Not in front of them." She glanced toward a quieter corridor that curved behind the cafe, and without waiting for him to agree, she guided the twins that way. They stopped at a bay of oversized windows where the hues softened and the floor-to-ceiling glass turned the runway into a moving painting. Zara crouched to the twins' height. 2 minutes, she told them gently. "Stay right here, watch that big plane, count the lights." The girl nodded solemnly, the boy too, their noses almost touching the glass. Zara straightened and faced Lucas, keeping her body angled so a step could return her to them in an instant. "You don't get to appear and suddenly take ground you abandon," she said quietly. "You lost the right to explanations when you chose your calendar over your vows." He absorbed the blow without defense. There were 1,000 explanations, none good enough. "I am not here to take anything," he said. I'm here because the second I saw them, I realized how much I've already missed. For a heartbeat, the truth flickered in her eyes. Not victory, not triumph, but a grief that had waited 7 years to be acknowledged. Missed isn't the same as present, she said. You can be sorry, you can even be sincere. It doesn't put food on tables you never sat at. It doesn't hold hands sleepless at 2 a.m. Her words landed like rain, steady, undeniable. He nodded, a small, helpless tilt that surprised them both. No, he said. I don't expect forgiveness. I'm asking for a chance to learn their names, to know what they laugh at, to earn whatever sliver you think I can. The humility was new in his voice and not performative. It felt like a hinge swinging open. The boy tapped the glass and turned. Mama, that one has blinking wings, the girl echoed. It's winking. Zara glanced back, a smile catching, and then, like a reflex she could not stop, she softened to answer. It's the navigation lights. She looked at Lucas again, that softness gone but its imprint lingering just enough to keep the conversation from breaking. You rebooked your flight, she said. It wasn't a question. I canceled it, he said. There are other planes. There aren't other first moments. She stared, like she was measuring the distance between the man she'd known and the man speaking now. First moments are not owed to you, she said. They belong to the children. Remember that. He swallowed, the admonition settling where pride used to sit. Then tell me what you need from me to make this right. I will respect whatever boundary you set. She considered, scanning him as if the truth might be stamped on his skin. The twins' reflections shimmered in the glass between them, small figures framed by sky and runway, and the ghost of 2 adults who once thought love could outrun history. Names, she said at last. You said you wanted to know names. You can have those, but nothing else, not yet. She pointed with a slight lift of her chin. Maya, she said, nodding toward the girl, and Leah, toward the boy. The names dropped into him like anchors, heavy and ripe. An immediate ache forming around them, as if the heart had been waiting years for syllables it didn't know it lacked. Aya, he repeated, careful, reverent. Liam. The children looked up at the sound, curious again, and for once Zara didn't block the line of sight. The girl studied him with frank interest, a mirror of his own childhood photos. The boy tilted his head, the exact tilt Lucas had seen in his bathroom mirror 1,000 mornings. They turned back to the window, unconcerned, returning to the important work of counting lights. Zara's shoulders eased by a fraction. That's all for today, she said. We're traveling, and I won't have them thrown into a circus. He nodded immediately. Of course. May I, he caught himself, corrected the instinct to ask for more. Thank you for telling me. A ringtone chimed from her pocket. Rideshare confirmed. She glanced down and then back. We have to go. He stepped aside, instinctively to make space, the way a door swings open rather than stands in a frame. Can I walk you to the curb, he asked, voice careful. From a distance, no questions. She hesitated, weighing risk and courtesy. From a distance, she agreed. Who'll be heir, he said, a flicker of dry humor born of nerves. It almost lifted one corner of her mouth. They returned to the flow of travelers. Zara reclaimed the twins' hands, and Maya immediately began narrating the things she saw. A scarf with stars, a dog in a carrier, a suitcase plastered with stickers. Liam asked if the plane with the winking wings knew Morse code. Zara answered both with patience born of practice and love. Lucas followed a few paces back, far enough that he could vanish if their small step. The sliding doors hissed open to a wash of damp air and taxi exhaust, the city's breath fogging the evening. A white sedan pulled up, with their license plate, hazard lights ticking like a metronome. Zara opened the rear door and guided the twins in, checking buckles with quick, competent fingers. She looked up once more, met his eyes across the drip-slick curb. For the first time, the hardness softened without disappearing. We're not a headline, she said. If this continues, it's on our terms. He nodded, the vow absolute. No headlines, he said. Only terms you choose. Maya's face pressed to the window, fogging a small circle with her breath. Liam waved a cautious half-wave. Lucas lifted his hand, a mirror of the gesture, feeling foolish and grateful at once. The car eased into the stream of taillights and rain. He stood under the overhang until the white sedan became another glow in the river, and then another, and then gone. The rain ticked against the pavement in a steady drumming he hadn't noticed on his way in. His assistant texted a storm of updates. He slid the phone back into his pocket, unread. Somewhere behind him, a new flight was boarding. Somewhere ahead of him, a life was boarding that he had once refused to enter. He exhaled, a long, unsteady breath that left him lighter and more terrified than any deal ever had. He did not follow farther. He didn't call out. He didn't chase. He stood there and did the hardest thing he had ever done. He waited, not for a plane, for permission, for the clean beginning that can only come after admitting how much you've broken. When he finally turned back into the airport, it wasn't to reclaim a missed departure. It was to reclaim, if he was allowed, a name spoken softly on a concourse. A father learning to say, and to deserve, Maya and Liam. Lucas Vance had never been a man to linger on unanswered questions. He had built empires on sharp decisions, clean lines, quick action. But after the airport, after the sight of Zara and the twins whose faces carried his own reflection, his world spun on a single, gnawing demand. The truth. He found her a week later, not by chance. He had resources, investigators, networks, data streams that tracked assets and enemies alike. Yet when his assistant handed him the file with Zara's address, Lucas stared at it for hours before moving. Power had never failed him before, but this felt fragile. Her apartment was modest, brick-lined and tucked into a quiet neighborhood far from the polished towers of his world. He waited on the curb, watching light flicker through curtains, hearing children's laughter filter into the night. It took him too long to climb the steps. When he finally knocked, his pulse thrummed with a fear no boardroom had ever given him. Zara opened the door, and for a moment the years collapsed. She looked the same, and yet she didn't. The same proud posture, the same eyes that once softened for him alone. But there was steel now, polished sharp by survival. She froze at the sight of him, her hand tightening on the doorframe. "You shouldn't be here," she said flatly. He swallowed. "I need answers." Her laugh was bitter, quiet. "Answers? After 7 years of silence? After watching me walk away with tears in my eyes and saying nothing? You don't get to demand answers, Luke." Her voice cut him, but he pressed forward, desperation cracking his usual calm. "They're mine." Her jaw clenched. "You noticed, but not notice. Maya and Liam." She flinched at the sound of their names on his lips, her hand tightening around the door. "You don't get to say their names. You forfeited that right." "Why didn't you tell me?" His voice broke, quieter now. "Why didn't you tell me?" She stepped outside, closing the door gently behind her, shielding the children from the storm of their voices. Her gaze held fury and sorrow in equal measure. "Because I knew what you'd see," she said. "Heirs, legacies, assets to be molded into the Vance dynasty. You never saw people first, Lucas. Not even me." His breath stuttered. "That's not true." "Isn't it?" she snapped. "Do you remember our marriage? The whirlwind romance that lasted a season before you returned to your fortress of logic? You could buy me diamonds, whisk me to Paris, but you couldn't sit across a table and tell me I was enough." He closed his eyes, but the memories rushed in anyway. The first time he saw her, she was speaking at a charity event, vibrant and fierce, her laughter pulling him across the room. Their courtship had been fire, late nights, impulsive trips, vows exchanged under starlight, and then distance, meetings that lasted longer than dinners, promises of tomorrow that never came. The night she left was burned into him. She had stood in their penthouse doorway, suitcase trembling in her grip, her eyes brimming. "I'm carrying your child," she had whispered. He remembered the ice in his own response. "Are you sure this is wise? You know what my family expects, what a legacy demands." Her sob had cut through the marble halls. "I'm not a legacy. I'm your wife." And he had let her go. Now, on a dimly lit sidewalk, the cost of that choice stood before him. 2 children he hadn't known, a woman hardened by his failure. "I thought I was protecting you," he whispered, the excuse hollow even to his ears. "You were protecting yourself," Zara shot back, "protecting your empire, your name. I carried twins alone because I knew they'd never be safe in a world where you valued reputation more than love." The weight of her words crushed him. He had missed first steps, first words, Laughter that wasn't recorded in boardrooms but lived in quiet kitchens. "I'm sorry," he said, the words strange on his tongue. He had spoken them in negotiations, in transactions, but never like this. Zara's face softened for a fraction of a second before it hardened again. Sorry doesn't change the years. Sorry doesn't feed them at night or calm them through storms. His chest ached. "Let me try now." She shook her head. "You don't try with children, Lucas. You show up, you stay. That's something you've never done." Inside the apartment, Maya's laugh echoed, pure and unknowing. Lucas felt it pierce him like light through cracks in stone. For the first time in years, he realized what true loss felt like. Not stocks, not deals, but flesh and blood slipping away. And in that moment, he knew Zara was right. He hadn't lost just her, he had abandoned the very chance to be a father. The night air pressed in, cool against Zara's skin, heavy against Lucas' chest. He stood there on the narrow landing, undone by truths that came too late. Truths wrapped in the laughter of two children he had never held. His voice faltered when he tried again. "Zara, what did I miss?" Her eyes flashed. Everything. Fevers at midnight, first steps across a cracked kitchen floor, the way Maya counts stars before bed, the way Liam clutches his blanket like it's armor. Their birthdays, where I stretched pennies into cakes. Their first day of school, and every time they asked why they didn't have a daddy like the other kids. Her throat tightened, but her posture remained unyielding. The kind of life you always thought was beneath you. The kind of life you always thought was beneath you. The words tore at him. He who measured worth by quarterly reports had no answer to children's questions about absence. He dropped his gaze, and for once, arrogance deserted him. "Thought," he began, but stopped. He had thought so many things back then. That marriage could fit neatly between meetings. That Zara would wait indefinitely for affection parceled in schedules. That children, if they came, could be handled like any other responsibility. He had been wrong. Dead wrong. By that, he tried again, his voice softer. "You'd be better without me." Her laugh was sharp, without humor. "Don't flatter yourself. I didn't leave because I was better without you. I left because I couldn't raise children in a house where silence spoke louder than love." The memory of that silence crashed over him. Nights when Zara had set the table for two, only to eat alone. Mornings when he had kissed her forehead absently, already thinking about the stock market. And the last night, when she had whispered she was pregnant, and he had responded not with joy but with analysis? Now, the analysis was over. The evidence stood 6 years tall inside that apartment. He reached for the railing to steady himself. "I need to know them," he said, almost pleading. "Maya, Liam, I don't expect you to forgive me, but don't shut me out from them." Her eyes softened, just slightly, but her lips stayed firm. "You don't just get to walk in after 6 years and claim them. They're not part of your empire, Lucas. They're not acquisition." "No," he said quickly. "I don't want to claim. I want to learn. To show them, show you, that I can be different." Zara studied him, as if trying to see if this man in the dark suit was capable of change, or if he was only the ghost of the one who let her walk away. Finally, she shook her head. "I protected them from you, from the Vance name, from the scrutiny that would have swallowed them whole. They are happy without your shadow hanging over them." "Yes," he said almost in a whisper. "They looked at me. At the airport. They knew?" Her breath caught. She hadn't expected him to say that. She remembered the way Maya tilted her head, the way Liam's hand tightened in hers when their eyes landed on the tall man staring across the concourse. Children didn't know of dynasties or betrayals. They knew connection. And that was what terrified her. "I never told them," she admitted quietly. "They don't know who you are. All they know is that I'm enough." The confession slammed into Lucas with force. He wanted to protest, to insist children needed fathers, but he stopped himself. His pride had no place here. She had been enough. She had been everything. "Then let me earn the right," he said, his voice breaking with a rare vulnerability. "Not as a Vance, not as a billionaire, just as their father." The words hung between them, fragile and raw. Zara closed her eyes briefly, the weight of years pressing on her. She thought of nights when she had wished for this, wished he would show up, choose them over ledgers and legacy. And now, here he was, asking. When she opened her eyes, they glistened, but her tone was steady. You can't undo abandonment, Lucas. You can't rewrite history with promises. If you want to be here now, you have to prove it with more than words. Well, he said immediately, the urgency of his voice almost startling them both. Whatever it takes, however long it takes, I'll approve it. Zara stepped back, hand on the door. Then start by walking away tonight. Let them sleep in peace, without strange voices in the hall. They don't need confusion before bed. He nodded slowly, knowing she was right. I'll go, he whispered. He paused, his voice barely audible. Thank you for telling me their names. Her gaze flickered, just enough to show the fracture in her armor. She opened the door and slipped inside, closing it firmly, but not with the finality of that night 7 years ago. Lucas stood there, staring at the wood grain of the door, feeling the ache of all he had lost and the fragile thread of something he might still regain. Behind it, he heard faint laughter, the twins giggling about something only children would find funny. It gutted him and steadied him all at once. For the first time in his life, Lucas Vance had nothing to control, no power to wield, no empire to lean on. For the first time, he had only hope, and it had been 7 years in the making. Lucas Vance was not accustomed to asking for proof. His entire life had been a steady stream of people trying to prove themselves to him. Business partners, rivals, employees, even family members desperate for his approval. But standing outside Zara's modest apartment, a week after their confrontation, he found himself asking for something he never thought he would. It wasn't that he doubted. He couldn't. Every line of Maya's smile, every tilt of Liam's head was his own reflection. Yet a lifetime of cold pragmatism whispered in his ear. He had built empires on verifiable truth, and if he was to repair the devastation between them, if he was to step into their lives in any capacity, he needed something undeniable. Not for himself, but for them. For Zara. When he raised the subject, her eyes hardened. DNA test, she repeated, her voice low with fury. He nodded once, steady though it cut him. Not because I don't believe you, I do, but because this isn't just about what we feel. It's about something the world will inevitably question, and I don't want Maya and Liam growing up in shadows of doubt or whispers of scandal. They deserve clarity. They deserve protection. Her lips trembled, as though she might shout, but instead her shoulders sagged. She pressed a hand to her temple, exhaling. You always did need science to tell you what your heart should have known. The words stung, but he didn't deny them. You're right, but if the paper keeps them from being pawns in society's games, then let the paper. For a long moment, silence filled the room, broken only by the muffled chatter of cartoons in the next room. Finally, she whispered, Fine, but not because you asked, because they deserve peace from rumors. The process was clinical. Swabs, sealed envelopes, sterile gloves. Maya giggled when the nurse tickled the inside of her cheek with the cotton tip, Liam frowning at the indignity of it. Feels weird, he muttered, scrunching his face, and Lucas nearly smiled at the familiar expression he saw every morning in his mirror. The days waiting for results were unbearable. Lucas found excuses to linger near Zara's apartment, sometimes delivering groceries, sometimes claiming business meetings nearby. He caught glimpses of them, Maya twirling in the courtyard with a rivet. Liam bent over a book far too advanced for his age. Their voices carried little fragments of joy and innocence, stabbing him with the weight of missed years. Strength came from doing hearts, which cost her cool air, and though she never invited him in, she didn't chase him away either. That, Lucas told himself, was the smallest of victories. When the envelope finally arrived, the air seemed to thicken around them. Zara opened it, her fingers trembling, her eyes unreadable. She scanned the paper and then pushed it toward him. He didn't need to read it, he already knew, but still his eyes devoured the words. 99.99% probability. Paternity confirmed. The paper blurred as his throat tightened. He set it down carefully, like something sacred, then looked at her. She was watching him with an expression he couldn't decipher. Relief, anger, grief, all colliding at once. she said softly. Now science has told you what my heart screamed 7 years ago. Lucas's voice cracked. Zara, I never stopped loving you. Her laugh was quiet, brittle, almost broken. If you loved me, then why did you make me walk away, alone? The question landed like a blade, slicing through every wall he had ever built. He saw the flashbacks as clearly as if they were playing on a screen. Zara's tear-stained face, her suitcase in hand, her voice trembling as she told him she was pregnant, and his own reply, cold, measured, steeped in family expectation rather than love. Because he had been afraid. Afraid she would never fit into the dynasty his family demanded. Afraid he would lose power if he defied them. Afraid of choosing her and the children over the empire he thought defined him. But he had lost them anyway. His voice broke. Because I was a coward. Because I thought protecting my family's name mattered more than protecting us. And I was wrong. So wrong. Tears welled in her eyes, but she blinked them away, lifting her chin with the dignity he had always admired. Your empire got what it wanted, but my children grew without a father. That's the legacy you left? Lucas bowed his head. For once in his life, he had no defense. Only regret. But the damage, undeniable as the DNA test, was also a chance. Proof had spoken. Now, maybe, healing could begin. The DNA test had ended the questions on paper, but in life, the answers still needed to unfold. Lucas lingered in the doorway of Zara's apartment a few days later, feeling like an intruder in a place that carried laughter he had not earned. Maya and Liam peeked at him from behind the couch, curious but cautious, like small birds watching a stranger approach their nest. Zara crossed her arms, guarded as always. You wanted the truth? Now you have it. What more do you need? His voice came low, stripped of its usual command. To know them. If you'll let me. Before Zara could respond, Maya marched forward, chin lifted with the stubborn pride that was unmistakably his. Are you the man from the airport? She asked. Her eyes, wide and fearless, searched his face with intensity. Lucas said softly. I'm Lucas, she said, allowing her eyes to move to the side of his face. She tilted her head. You looked at me like you knew me. We did, she admitted, because you remind me of someone I once loved very much. His gaze flicked to Zara, who stiffened at the implication. From the couch, Liam frowned, clutching a small toy car in his hand. Mama says strangers aren't safe. Lucas crouched, meeting him at eye level, careful not to get too close. Your mother is right, but I'm not here to hurt you. He hesitated, then added, I'm here because I think about the day you were born and all the days after. I want to know what makes you laugh, what makes you brave. If you'll let me. The boy studied him with quiet seriousness, then shrugged in that offhand way children do when they want to hide their interest. I like cars. And puzzles. And my sister's annoying. Maya gasped. I am not annoying. She turned to Lucas, her curls bouncing. He snores louder than a dragon. That's annoying? Their playful argument filled the room, and Lucas felt something break open in his chest. For the first time in years, he laughed. A raw, unpracticed sound that startled even him. The twins blinked at him, then giggled, as though his laughter was an invitation they had been waiting for. Zara stood back, arms still folded, but her eyes betrayed her. She watched as Liam offered Lucas the toy car, shy but deliberate, and Maya began listing her favorite books, her small voice growing louder as she realized he was listening. Lucas, the man who had spent his life skimming reports and silencing chatter, leaned in, soaking in every word. Later that evening, after the twins had retreated to their room, with promises of showing him their biggest Lego tower next time, Zara leaned against the kitchen counter. Her posture was taut, but there was a crack in her composure now. But he shouldn't take to you so easily, she murmured, half to herself. It's not fair. Lucas turned to her, his expression raw. Children see truth faster than adults. They don't care about legacies or mistakes, they just care if someone looks at them like they matter. Her jaw tightened. And you think you can just start now, after years of not looking? He nodded slowly, painfully. I know I can't undo the damage, but I can spend the rest of my life showing them, and you, that I will never walk away again." Zara's eyes burned, though her voice remained steady. "You say you never stopped loving me, but love that abandons isn't love. It's fear. So tell me, Lucas, if you loved me, why did you make me walk away?" "Alone." The question cut deeper this time, sharper, because it came after watching their children bond with him so naturally, as if some invisible thread had been waiting all along to reconnect. He opened his mouth, but no ready answer came. Only the echo of his failure, and the vow rising in him like fire. He would never let it happen again. He took a breath, forcing the truth past the knot in his throat. "Because I was a coward," he whispered. "Because I let pride and family and the weight of a name come before the one person who should have come before everything else. I can't change that, but I can choose differently now." Zara's eyes filled, but she didn't let the tears fall. She shook her head once, turning away, her silhouette framed in the dim kitchen light. "Then prove it, not with words, with time, with consistency, with being there when they call your name." Behind the bedroom door, the twins' laughter spilled out again, muffled but bright, innocent to the storm raging between their parents. Lucas closed his eyes and listened to the sound, committing it to memory. That laughter was his compass now. He opened them again, looking at Zara not as a challenge to conquer, but as the only woman whose forgiveness mattered. And though the DNA test had confirmed what his heart already knew, the real test, of love, of redemption, of family, was only beginning. News traveled fast in the world of wealth, faster than in any other circle. A single whisper could become a headline in less than a day, and secrets, especially family secrets, were currency. When Evelyn Vance, Lucas's mother, caught word of Zara and the twins, her reaction was immediate and merciless. Lucas was in his office when the storm broke. His assistant entered with hesitation, clutching an envelope. "Sir, this came from your mother's legal team." Lucas tore it open and scanned the papers. Custody petitions. Evelyn Vance was demanding full guardianship of Maya and Liam, citing their undeniable bloodline and the necessity of securing their rightful place in the Vance legacy. His mother had not even spoken to him first. The world tilted. Lucas dropped the papers onto his desk, his throat tightening. For years, he had carried the weight of Evelyn's cold, strategic worldview, believing it necessary to hold the empire together. But this was more than strategy. This was an attempt to rip children from the only home they had ever known, from the mother who had sacrificed everything for them. He called Zara immediately, but she didn't answer. When he arrived at her apartment that evening, she was already waiting for him, fury burning in her eyes. In her hand was a matching envelope. "You let this happen," she spat, voice trembling with rage. "Your mother's lawyers served me this afternoon, in front of the kids. Do you know what it's like to explain to a 6-year-old why someone wants to take them away from their mother?" Lucas stepped forward, shaking his head. "Zara, no, I didn't know. I didn't approve this." "Perhaps, but what if you stopped to look at me? Did you stop down?" She fired back. "Because deep down, you're still the man who sees heirs before humans." The accusation pierced him. He wanted to deny it, to swear that wasn't who he was anymore, but memories surged. Nights when he had calculated Zara's worth in terms of legacy, mornings when he had thought more of his surname than her heart. The silence hung heavy, damning. Zara's hands trembled as she clutched the papers. "I won't let her. I won't let you. They are not pawns in the Vance dynasty. They are children. My children. And I'll burn the world down before I let anyone take them." Lucas's voice cracked as he stepped closer. "Zara, listen to me. I am not filing for custody. I never will. Not against you. I will fight my mother on this until the last breath in me. But please, don't put me in the same box as her. Not anymore." Her eyes softened for a fleeting second, but the years of betrayal, the fresh sting of legal threats, slammed the wall back into place. She turned from him, her voice low and sharp. "Damage is done, Lucas. My children saw men in suits delivering papers that said they don't belong with me. Do you understand what that does to them?" From the bedroom, muffled sobs echoed. Maya and Liam clung to each other, their young hearts cracking under the weight of adult wars. Zara's shoulders sagged as she closed her eyes, shielding them with her body. Lucas stood frozen, guilt swallowing him whole. For once, his wealth, his power, none of it could fix what had just broken. The next morning, Lucas stormed into the Vance estate, the papers crumpled in his fist. Evelyn sat in her grand parlor, sipping tea as though nothing in the world were amiss. Her diamond necklace glittered, her posture pristine. "You went behind my back," Lucas growled. She raised a brow, serene as ever. "I acted where you have been weak." "Those children are Vance's, Lucas. Their blood makes them heirs, and heirs cannot be left in the hands of a maid who hides them in a two-bedroom flat." His jaw clenched. "That maid is their mother. She kept them alive when I wasn't there. You don't get to erase her." Evelyn's voice was steel. "You are blinded by guilt. I am safeguarding the family legacy. If you will not do what is necessary, I will." "Easy," Lucas said, his voice low but firm. "You will not. I'll fight you in court, Mother, if I have to. Those children stay with Zara." For the first time, Evelyn faltered, eyes narrowing. "You would defy me? For her?" He corrected. But Zara didn't see his defiance. All she saw was the envelope on her kitchen table, a constant reminder of the storm his world had dragged into hers. She grew distant, quiet. When Lucas called, she rarely answered. When he visited, she stood guard at the door, letting him see the twins only for brief moments. Her walls were back, higher than before. One evening, Lucas arrived to find Maya on the steps, hugging her knees. Her cheeks were wet, her small voice trembling. "Don't Adoris, Dad will kill me. Don't you agree him?" The words hollowed him. Liam appeared behind her, clutching his blanket, his eyes wide. "Did we do something wrong?" Lucas knelt, his chest aching as he pulled them close. "No," he said softly. "You did nothing wrong. You are perfect. It's the grown-ups who are making mistakes." They clung to him, small arms tight around his neck, as if holding him there might keep him from vanishing again. Zara stood in the doorway, watching with tears brimming, torn between fury and ache. She wanted to protect them from disappointment, but the sight of their father's raw embrace cracked her resolve. Lucas lifted his gaze to hers, silent but pleading. For trust, for another chance, for time. And though her heart screamed no, a tiny voice within Zara whispered that maybe, just maybe, the man she once loved was fighting to be more than his mother's son. The Vance estate was cavernous, but Lucas felt like a ghost wandering its echoing halls. He had come to retrieve some of his own files from storage, trying to drown his unrest in work. Instead, fate put something unexpected into his hands. On a low shelf in a forgotten guest room closet, beneath a stack of old boxes Zara must have used years ago, sat a small, worn photo album. Its edges were frayed, the cover bent, but it pulsed with a quiet intimacy that drew him closer. He recognized the handwriting on the first page, instantly. Zara's looping script, tender and precise. His fingers shook as he opened it. There, staring up at him, was Maya as a toddler. Frosty smeared across her cheeks as she leaned over a lopsided cake covered in too many candles. The caption beneath read, "Second birthday. She wanted pink. Everything." Lucas's breath caught. He hadn't been there. He hadn't even known. Page after page unfolded a world he had missed. Liam building towers of wooden blocks, Zara crouching beside him with weary but proud eyes. Halloween costumes that were clearly stitched by hand, crooked seams but shining smiles. School projects made of glitter and glue. Bedtime snapshots of Zara reading with both children curled against her shoulders. Every picture was a silent testimony. She had built joy out of scraps, stitched love into every corner of their lives, alone. But the page that destroyed him came halfway through the album. Maya, a little older now, sat at the kitchen table with crayons scattered around her. In her small hands, she held up a drawing. The caption beneath, in Zara's handwriting, simply said, "Maya's Dream." Lucas stared at the image. A stick-figure girl with curls holding hands with a tall man labeled Daddy, a sun shining overhead. and scrawled in uneven letters across the page, "My dream, meet Daddy, someday." His vision blurred. For the first time in decades, Lucas Vance, billionaire and master of control, broke. The sob tore out of him before he could swallow it, echoing through the empty hall. He pressed the photo album to his chest as though it could mend the years, as though it could give him back what pride had stolen. By the time he reached Zara's door that evening, the album was still in his hands, his suit damp from rain, his resolve stripped of grandeur. He knocked, and when she opened the door, her eyes widened in shock at the sight of him. "Lucas," she whispered, wary. He held the album out like an offering. "I wasn't ready then, but I am now. Not to control, not to claim, but to show up." Her eyes softened at the rawness in his voice, though her stance remained guarded. She glanced at the album, then back at him. "And what about your mother's lawyers, your empire, the legacy you always put before us? It hurts you." "I won't fight you for them," Lucas said immediately, shaking his head. "No more papers, no more threats. I want nothing but to be present for them, and if you'll let me, for you." The children's laughter echoed from the back of the apartment, unaware of the storm at the door. Zara's heart twisted. She studied Lucas, seeing no arrogance now, only a man stripped bare, holding out the most fragile thing he had, sincerity. At the last, she stepped aside. "You can come in," she said quietly, "but this time we do it on my terms." The apartment felt smaller than Lucas remembered. The ceilings were low, the furniture worn, but the space pulsed with life. Children's drawings taped to the fridge, little shoes scattered near the door, the faint smell of tomato soup simmering from the kitchen. For a man used to marble floors and curated silence, it was foreign, but as Maya and Liam rushed into the room, their eyes widening at the sight of him, Lucas thought he'd never seen a place more sacred. "Daddy," Maya whispered, half afraid the word would shatter if she said it too loudly. Lucas crouched, his throat tightening. "Yes," he said simply, his voice breaking. Liam's eyes darted to the album in his hand. "Did you see our costumes? Mama made them." Lucas smiled through the ache. "I did. You looked like superheroes." The boy's chest puffed with pride. Dinner was a simple affair, soup and bread, but Lucas sat at the table like it was a banquet. He listened as Maya described her favorite book, and Liam argued that dinosaurs were cooler than space rockets. He laughed when soup dribbled down Liam's chin, felt his heart twist when Maya slid her tiny hand into his without hesitation. Later, when bedtime came, Zara handed him a worn children's book. "They'll ask you to read," she said, her voice quiet but firm. "If you're staying, you do it, like a father, not a guest." Lucas swallowed hard, nodded, and followed the children into their small room. He read aloud, his deep voice carrying through the cramped space, stumbling once when Maya rested her head against his arm. Liam curled close too, and for the first time in years, Lucas felt what home could mean. When the lights were out and the children's breathing softened into sleep, he returned to the kitchen. Zara leaned against the counter, her arms folded. "You can't come and go," she said, her eyes steady. "If you're here, you show up. Not as the billionaire who fixes things with money, but as Lucas, the man who broke and is trying to mend. If you can't do that, you don't come at all." He met her gaze without flinching. "Then, I'll keep showing up until you believe me." For a moment, the air between them was heavy, filled with everything unsaid. Then Zara nodded once. Not forgiveness, not yet, but the first fragile thread of trust. Lucas exhaled, the weight of 7 lost years pressing down on him. But for the first time, he felt he was standing in the right place. Not at the head of an empire, not in the shadow of Evelyn's expectations, but here, in a small apartment, with soup-stained bowls in the sink and 2 children dreaming down the hall. Finally, learning how to be more than a name. It began with a flash. Lucas hadn't even noticed it at first. The brief burst of light from across the street as he walked Maya and Liam back to Zara's apartment after an afternoon at the park. Maya was still sticky from cotton candy, Liam clutching a paper rocket they'd built together. Their hands were small but firm in his, each child skipping at their own rhythm. To Lucas, it was the first day in years he could remember smiling without forcing it. By the time he climbed into his car that evening, the world had already caught fire. Billionaire's secret family? The headlines screamed from every news site the next morning. The photo, grainy but unmistakable, showed him in jeans and a casual shirt, holding both children's hands. Their features told the rest of the story. Maya's curls catching the light, Liam's dimple as he laughed, both of them reflections of him. The media devoured it. Articles poured out, speculative timelines, whispers of scandal, debates about inheritance. Some painted the image as tender, even redemptive. Others clawed at it with cruelty. Worse were the comment sections. Racist trolls spat venom, questioning the children's legitimacy, sneering at Zara's background. Social class lines split open, half defending Zara as a devoted mother, half accusing her of trapping a billionaire. Inside her apartment, Zara slammed the laptop shut, her hands trembling. The twins looked up in confusion. "Mama, why are people saying mean things?" Maya asked, her small voice. Zara pulled her close. "Because sometimes, when people don't understand love, they make up stories. But you don't listen to them. You know who you are." But even as she soothed her daughter, Zara's heart raced. She had fought for years to shield them from the glare of Lucas's world, and now it had kicked in her door. Lucas's phone didn't stop buzzing. Calls from the board, from investors, from his mother, who had only one sharp demand: control the narrative before it controls you. For once, he didn't listen. He had spent too much of his life bowing to appearances. Not this time. 2 days later, he stepped onto a stage in a packed conference hall, cameras flashing, microphones aimed like weapons. He wore no armor, no tailored smile, just truth. "Are my children," Lucas began, his voice steady, though his heart thundered. "Maya and Liam Vance. They are not rumors, they are not pawns. They are mine, by blood, by heart, by every measure that matters." Gasps rippled through the crowd. He gripped the podium tighter, leaning in. "The greatest mistake of my life," he said, voice breaking just enough to be human, "was letting their mother walk away." The room fell silent, stunned. The words hung heavy, not crafted for PR, but carved straight from regret. At home, Zara stood frozen in front of the television. Maya sat cross-legged on the carpet, whispering, "He said our names." Liam grinned, proud and shy at once. But Zara's eyes brimmed with tears. She pressed a hand to her lips, shaking her head. She had prepared for denial, for half-truths, for cold legal maneuvers. Not this. Not raw honesty broadcast to the world. Her phone buzzed. Messages from friends, from old neighbors, from people she barely knew. Support poured in. He owned up. Finally, he said it. Yet Zara didn't call him. Couldn't. Her trust had been broken too many times, and words, no matter how public, couldn't mend it overnight. Still, as she tucked her children into bed that night, Maya whispered, "He meant it, Mama. I know he did." Zara turned away quickly, tears slipping free. For the first time in years, she wondered if her daughter might be right. The fallout was immediate. Stock analysts predicted chaos, reporters camped outside the Vance estate, and tabloids churned out covers with headlines like "Secret Heirs Revealed" and "Love Lies and a Billionaire's Twins." Yet the expected collapse never came. Instead, something stranger happened. Support clips of Lucas's press conference spread online. The line, "The greatest mistake of my life was letting their mother walk away," was replayed on news programs, shared on social media, and even quoted in editorials. For the first time, the public saw not just a billionaire CEO, but a man stripped bare, admitting failure. "About time a man owns up," one viral comment read. "Protect those kids, protect that mama," another declared. Aya and Liam trembled worldwide. Photos of the twins, once fodder for cruel speculation, were now paired with praise for their bravery. People began sending Zara messages of encouragement, calling her a real queen, a survivor, the heart he never deserved but needed. But not everyone celebrated. Evelyn Vance's fury knew no bounds. She stormed into Lucas's office days later, slamming a newspaper onto his desk. "You've disgraced this family," she hissed. "You have invited the world to laugh at us." Lucas didn't flinch. "No, Mother. I've stopped lying to the world. That's what you can't stand." "But you'll ruin us," she snapped. "Board members are already asking questions." "Let them," Lucas said coldly. "If they don't like the truth, they can leave. I'll rebuild without them if I have to. I will not rebuild without my children." For the first time in his life, Evelyn had no retort. She left with a face carved from ice, her empire of control cracking. Meanwhile, Zara's life felt like it had been flipped inside out. Supporters praised her strength, but cameras followed her everywhere. School pickups, grocery runs, even at church. She hated the intrusion, hated the flash of lenses when her children deserved peace. Yet one evening, as she scrolled through her phone after putting Maya and Liam to bed, she stumbled across a video that stopped her breath. It was footage of Lucas leaving the press conference. He wasn't smiling in triumph, he wasn't basking in attention. He looked shaken, exhausted, human. And when a reporter, he was yelling, "Why now, Mr. Vance? Why admit this now?" Lucas had paused, his raw, "Because I don't want my children to ever believe I was ashamed of them." Zara's throat tightened. Tears slipped down before she could stop them. She didn't call him. She couldn't. Not yet. Trust wasn't rebuilt in a headline or a press conference, but for the first time in 7 years, the weight on her chest eased slightly. Lucas too felt the difference. His board calmed when public support grew. Investors, seeing the storm turn into sympathy, stopped threatening to pull out. His empire would not crumble, but it no longer mattered to him the way it once had. Every night he replayed the memory of Maya clutching his hand, Liam laughing at his stories, Zara's eyes shimmering with guarded fire. He had faced the world for them. Now he knew the harder battle was waiting, the one at her door, the one for her trust. And though she had not called, he kept his phone close, waiting for the day her number might light his screen. The invitation arrived not with a lawyer's stamp or a courier's seal, but in Lucas's own handwriting, folded carefully inside Maya's school folder. When Zara found it, she almost crumpled it on sight. It was simple, almost disarming. "Dinner, just us, no cameras, no lawyers. My rooftop Friday night. For Maya and Liam, if nothing else." She almost said no. Every instinct screamed to protect her peace, her children's stability. But then the twins spotted the card. Maya's eyes widened with delight. Liam clapped his hands and both pleaded with her until she finally sighed, "We'll see." Friday came with a dusky sky. Zara dressed simply, not wanting to send the wrong message, but when the twins tugged at her hands, grinning with anticipation, she knew resistance was futile. For them, she would walk into the storm again. The rooftop of Lucas's penthouse wasn't what she expected. There was no polished silver or crystal, no endless rows of servers. Instead, soft string lights draped overhead, their golden glow reflecting off clay pots of herbs and flowers. A single wooden table sat at the center, set with mismatched plates, hand-cut bread, bowls of pasta that smelled homemade. Lucas stood waiting, his tie gone, his sleeves rolled, his eyes... Maya squealed and ran forward, Liam close behind. "Daddy?" Lucas bent, arms wide, catching them both. Zara froze at the sight. It wasn't just wealth or power, it was humanity etched into his posture, vulnerability in his embrace. As they ate, laughter filled the night. Lucas told clumsy jokes, Liam imitated him. Maya insisted on more cheese, and Zara watched. For the first time in years, she saw her children light up in a way she hadn't realized they'd been missing. The joy of having both parents near. The moment broke when Maya, with a child's innocence, set her fork down and asked, "Can we live in the same house someday?" The table stilled. Zara's hand froze mid-air. Lucas's throat worked, his gaze meeting Zara's across the flickering candlelight. He set his fork down slowly, leaned forward, and spoke, not as a billionaire, not as a strategist, but as a man laying his heart bare. Contracts. No lawyers, no control, just life. Together, if you'll let me. The children's eyes darted between them, wide with hope. Zara's breath caught, the old wounds colliding with the present warmth. Every wall she had built trembled under the weight of their faces, their laughter, the sincerity in Lucas's voice. Her heart pounded. Could she risk it again? Could she trust him with more than just her children, but with herself? Silence stretched, broken only by the city hum below. Then, finally, with a trembling inhale, Zara nodded. The twins erupted in cheers, leaping from their chairs to wrap around them both. Lucas rose, crossing the space, and when Zara didn't step back, he pulled her gently into his arms. For the first time in 7 years, the embrace didn't feel like an end. It felt like the beginning they had both been too blind to claim. The string lights swayed gently in the evening breeze, casting golden halos across the table as the city glimmered beyond. For a long moment after Zara's nod, the world seemed to pause. Lucas held her gaze, his chest rising and falling as if he hardly believed what she had given him a chance. The twins squealed with delight, their small arms wrapping around both of them. Maya tugged at Lucas' sleeve. "Does that mean we're a family now? Like, really?" Lucas's voice cracked as he answered, "Yes, sweetheart, really." Liam's eyes widened. "Even when you go on trips? Even when you're busy with work?" Lucas crouched, his eyes level with his son's, especially then, because family isn't part-time. It's always. Zara pressed her lips together, her heart aching at the raw honesty in his words. She had heard too many promises before, promises drowned in board meetings, brushed aside for legacy and control. But tonight was different. Lucas wasn't cloaked in his suit of armor. He was stripped down, vulnerable, a man who had finally learned what mattered. Dinner stretched into stories. Lucas asked about the twins' favorite games, their fears, their dreams. Maya confessed she wanted to be an artist. Liam said he wanted to fly rockets, and Lucas listened like every word was scripture. When dessert came, a simple bowl of strawberries and whipped cream, Maya leaned against Zara's shoulder and whispered, "Mama, you're smiling again." Zara froze, startled by the child's perception, and then realized she was. Not forced, not guarded, just smiling. Later, as the twins chased each other between the herb pots, Lucas and Zara stood side by side at the edge of the rooftop. The city stretched out in a sea of lights, but for once, Lucas wasn't looking at the empire he'd built. He was looking at her. "I can't undo the past," he said quietly. "I can't erase the nights you cried alone or the years I wasn't here. But I can promise this: no more boardrooms before bedtime stories. No more legacy before love." He turned to her fully, his eyes unflinching. "You, Zara, the children, that's the life I want, if you'll let me." Zara's throat tightened. The memory of her heartbreak still lingered, sharp and raw. But as she watched Liam tackle Maya with laughter, saw Lucas watching them with awe instead of calculation, she felt the fragile beginnings of something she thought had died. What deep cracks emerged. "I'm not promising forever tonight," she whispered, her voice trembling, "but I'm not walking away either." Lucas reached for her hand, and for the first time in years, she didn't pull back. The twins spotted them, hands clasped, and ran over. Maya beamed. "Group hug!" Zara laughed, tears spilling as 4 arms and 2 small bodies squeezed between them, binding them together under the glow of the lights. Lucas buried his face against his children's curls, against the shoulder of the woman he had nearly lost forever. For the first time, the rooftop was not just a place above the city. It was the foundation of something new. Fragile, imperfect, but real. A family, reborn in the night air. 1 year later, the city buzzed with anticipation as spotlights lit up the grand hall where the Vance Monroe Foundation for Family Equity was about to be unveiled. Photographers crowded outside, waiting for glimpses of CEOs, politicians, activists, and celebrities. But inside, the air created a different hum-nod of power, but of promise. At the center of it all stood Zara Monroe, her poise undeniable as she adjusted the microphone on stage. Her gown shimmered beneath the lights, but it wasn't her dress that commanded attention. It was the strength in her eyes, the grace in her presence. For years she had been painted as the maid who left, the woman whispered about in tabloids, the mother shielding her twins from a story, but as the author of her own. Beside the stage, Lucas watched silently. He wore a simple black suit, no boardroom armor, no air of detachment. His hand rested lightly on Maya's shoulder while Liam fiddled with his bow tie, complaining it was too tight. Lucas chuckled softly, crouched down, and fixed it with surprising gentleness. When the lights dimmed and Zara stepped to the podium, the room hushed. "Tonight," she began, her voice steady though her heart raced, "we open the doors of the Vance Monroe Foundation for Family Equity. But this is not about wealth, it is not about power, it is about justice and love. It is about mothers who sacrifice without recognition, children who deserve more than whispers, and families who fight to stay whole against the odds." Murmurs rippled across the audience. Some were surprised by her bluntness, others leaned in, captivated. Zara pressed on. "Spent years believing that love could be silenced, that dignity could be stripped, that wealth decided who mattered. But standing here, I know better. We name this foundation not after legacy alone, but after truth. The truth that every child deserves to see themselves honored, every mother deserves to feel safe, and every family deserves it." Applause began to swell. Lucas's chest tightened. He had delivered 1,000 speeches in his life, earnings reports, expansion plans, political donations, but never had he heard words that cut straight to the bone the way hers did. Behind him, Maya tugged on his sleeve. "Daddy," she whispered, "are you crying?" Lucas blinked rapidly, realizing his vision had blurred. He gave a quiet laugh, brushing a tear with the back of his hand. "Maybe just a little." On stage, Zara's voice softened as she spoke of the programs. Scholarships for biracial children who felt invisible in the cracks of society, housing for single mothers, inclusive education initiatives. She thanked donors, partners, and volunteers, but when her gaze finally landed on Lucas, the corners of her lips curved into something only he could read. Gratitude, trust, a future. And in that moment, Lucas knew the empire he had once killed himself to maintain meant nothing compared to this. Compared to her, to their children, to the foundation carrying both their names. As applause thundered through the hall, Lucas leaned down to his twins. "This," he whispered, his voice trembling, "this is the legacy I never knew I needed." Aya slipped her small hand into his. Liam grinned wide, and as Zara stepped down from the stage, the four of them stood together. No longer fractured pieces, but a family. Imperfect, fragile, real. The legacy of Vance was no longer marble towers or gilded contracts. It was laughter, love, and a name reshaped by truth. The gala wound down with glasses clinking and conversations echoing. But for Lucas, the night wasn't about applause or headlines. It was about the way Zara's shoulders relaxed when she left the podium. The way Maya clung to her skirt with pride. The way Liam waved at the cameras, as if fame were just another game. When the family finally returned to their townhouse, exhaustion hung heavy, but warmth lingered. Instead of retreating to his office, as the old Lucas would have, he carried the twins upstairs. He listened to Maya chatter about the flowers on stage, and nodded as Liam insisted that one day he would give a speech too. But mine will be about rockets. Lucas tucked them into bed with a tenderness he once thought himself incapable of, then stood in the doorway long after their eyes fluttered shut. Downstairs, Zara poured 2 cups of tea. She wasn't dressed for the gala anymore, just a soft robe, her hair loose. Yet in that simplicity, Lucas thought she had never looked more beautiful. "You stepped down today," she said quietly, handing him a cup. He nodded. 3 boards, 2 advisory councils, more will follow. Your mother must be furious. His lips curved wryly. But for once, I don't care. I built an empire that drained me, Zara. Tonight, I saw what it feels like to build something that gives life back. She studied him for a long moment. I didn't believe you at first, she admitted. Not when you said you'd changed. Not even after the press conference. But tonight, I did. Lucas exhaled slowly, setting down his tea. That's all I've wanted. For you to see it, for you to believe that I'm not the man who let you walk away. Zara's gaze softened. You're not anymore. The silence that followed wasn't heavy. It was healing, the kind that allowed old wounds to breathe, to close at last. In the months that followed, their lives shifted. Lucas traded corporate war rooms for school drop-offs and quiet dinners. He was still a billionaire, still a man of influence, but his priorities had been rewritten. He read bedtime stories more than annual reports. He chose painting with Maya and rocket experiments with Liam over shareholder meetings. The world called it shocking. Lucas called it living. Zara, meanwhile, took the reins of the foundation with fierce grace. She visited shelters, spoke at schools, sat with mothers who had been dismissed and children who had been ignored. She didn't just lead from an office, she led with her hands, with her heart. Every time Lucas saw her kneeling beside a child, encouraging them, he realized she was teaching him too, that love wasn't about power, it was about presence. The following spring, at a smaller community event, Lucas stood at the back as Zara addressed a group of children. She wore no gown, no jewels, just a blouse smudged with paint from a morning art project. And yet, when she smiled, he felt the same pull he had felt the first day he saw her, and again the day she walked away. Maya tugged on his sleeve. "Daddy, you're crying again." Lucas laughed softly, crouching down to meet her eyes. "I guess your mommy always makes me cry, but in the best way." Liam tilted his head. "Is that because you love her?" Lucas nodded, his throat tight. "Yes, because I love her, and because I'm proud of her. Of all of you." Later that night, when the children were asleep, Lucas found Zara on the porch, looking out at the stars. He slid his arms around her waist, resting his chin on her shoulder. "Is this good?" he whispered, echoing his words from the gala. "Is the legacy I never knew I needed?" Zara turned her head slightly, their eyes meeting in the quiet glow of the porch light. "Not wealth," she said, "not power, just us." He kissed her forehead, then her lips, and together they stood in silence, watching the night sky. Their family wasn't perfect. It was better. It was real, and at last it carried their name, Vance Monroe, a legacy written not in marble or money, but in love.